book drove me crazy. Hello, and welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about A History of What Comes Next by Sylvain Neuvel. This is a sci-fi, supposedly dark satire of the space race. It picks up at the end of World War II in 1945 with our main character Mia rescuing Werner von Braun from the Germans and moves on from there. I have a lot of feelings on this book. So I normally never read the summaries to you guys because I feel like you're more than capable of reading summaries online or on the back of book covers yourself, and I like to just kind of give my own version of what happened. But I think in this case, before we start jumping into talking about the pros and cons of this book, I want to read you the summary so you can get an understanding of what I was expecting when I went into this book and what ended up actually happening. Showing that truth is stranger than fiction, Sylvain Neuvel's A History of What Comes Next is a sci-fi thriller blending a fast-moving, darkly satirical look at 1940s rocketry with the amorality of progress and the nature of violence. Always run, never fight. Preserve the knowledge, survive at all costs, take them to the stars. For 99 generations, Mia's family has shaped human history to push them to the stars, making brutal, wrenching choices and sacrificing countless lives. Her turn comes at the dawn of the age of rocketry. Her mission? To lure Werner von Braun away from the Nazi Party and into the American rocket program, and secure the future of the space race. But Mia's family is not the only group pushing levers of history, and an even more ruthless enemy lurks behind the scenes. A darkly satirical first contact thriller as seen through the eyes of the women who make progress possible and the men who are determined to stop them. Alright, so when I read that, I took that to mean that we were going to be talking a lot about rocket science and a lot about Werner von Braun, and this would take place in America, correct? Hate to break it to you, that's not what actually happened. That little bit about Werner von Braun took place in like the first 50 pages, and then it just kind of went off from there. Sort of discussed the space race, but it was more just an excuse to be a 19-year-old brat complaining about her life and nothing else. Yes, people died. Yes, the end was kind of exciting, but honestly, on a whole, I gave this book 2 stars. And full disclosure, this is all just my opinion. I mean no shade at all if you really love this book. Sylvain Neuvel, this is the second time I've tried their works. I just don't vibe with this author. I just wanted to get all of that out of the way first so you guys kind of knew my initial thoughts and kind of where I was coming from. This is the beginning of an overall series. I don't know how many books there are going to be in it, and honestly at this point I really don't care to find out. I did leave off on a pretty significant cliffhanger, so if you liked it, definitely you'll want to read more. I'm going to start with the pros because there are some very brief pros to this series. The prose itself, like the writing style, actually lends itself quite well to depicting the brutality of everything that was going on. I think the author was quite successful in showing just how dark and how depressing and how truly awful people can be to each other. And I feel like if there were more flowery writing style or even more descriptions, then perhaps it wouldn't have been such like bam, 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 yes, these people are terrible, yes, people in general are terrible, and it really hammered that point home. There were also a series of flashbacks in the story that kind of offered a look at what happened in past points, and it also kind of offered different stories from history that you don't generally get to hear. It was the story of the history of Mia's ancestors, and it was really cool. I thought it was a nice breakup from everything that was going on. Yes, I feel like there probably should have either been more of them or they should have honestly been taken out completely because it didn't really go with the rest of the story, but I liked it because it was something other than the main story. I really just had a lot of issues with the main story. One of my main issues with this story that I was going to get into here in a little bit was the fact that we didn't really get a whole lot of backstory. Like, yes, this is the first book of a series. Yes, it's probably to be expected that we are not going to be told everything. But I've just gotten, I guess, spoiled with all of the fantasy books that I've been reading lately, where we get such immersive world building, like in Brandon Sanderson, or even Joe Abercrombie, or Harrow the Ninth. Like, we get such immersive, all-encompassing world building. We get, like, a clear-cut look at the history, and yes, the history of these characters is kind of part of the mystery that's unfolding and part of the journey, but we got literally nothing until, like, page 100, 150 of this book. And for me, somebody who likes to kind of know where we're coming from and why we're making these decisions and why the characters have these abilities, it was just super, super frustrating that we got literally nothing. We got hints at what was going on, and then we got, like, oh, you know, it was totally explained, and then it never was actually explained. What we did finally start getting toward the end of the book was actually really interesting. Like, there was a lot of very intriguing backstory that I feel like should have been integrated more. You could have kept, like, how vague it was, but you could have gotten a little more baseline than what we ended up with. And then the final pro I had was this book was actually surprisingly LGBTQ friendly and did a really good job of showing the consequences of being bisexual during this time period, because it took place mostly during the Cold War, despite the fact that the summary said it was going to take place during World War II. That was a really interesting look. I think all of that kind of got resolved a little too quickly and a little too wibbly wobbly for my liking. There were some decent elements to this book. I don't mean to, which is why I got 2 stars instead of 1. As I mentioned earlier, I had absolutely no idea what was going on in this book for like the first solid 100 pages, because the whole, oh, you know, this is going to be a World War II caper happened in the first like 20 to 30 pages, and then we were out of Germany, we were back to America for like a page, and then suddenly we were back to Russia, and it was just so all over the place. And the pacing itself was a nightmare, because we would be going super, super, super fast, and then all of a sudden we'd be slamming on the brakes, and then just meandering around, and then Mia would just be navel-gazing and complaining to her mom about how much her life sucked, and then all of a sudden all this action would be happening, and suddenly it's 2 years later, and she's like, wait, what? Can we have a second to figure out what is going on here, please? And all of that kind of goes into the fact that the prose was super simplistic, and you really couldn't get into the meat of what was going on. It was just kind of all left up to the reader to figure out, and I'm just like, I'm not figuring it out. I do not have enough context clues. I don't need a lot of hand-holding. In fact, I get annoyed when authors hold my hand, but I need something to go on. And I really couldn't relate to any of these characters at all. Like, I couldn't get a sense of, like, what their abilities were. We kept being told, oh yeah, they're super, super smart, they did this, this, and this, but we're not actually shown any of it. And then every once in a while we're shown that they can get super, super violent when felt threatened, but we don't really get a sense as to why they feel threatened by certain things and why they have to keep running. And yes, I guess that does tie into the mystery, which is honestly explained a little bit at the very, very end. But all of that needed to be like way, way, way sooner, because I was confused. This book made me feel stupid. Characters themselves, they were all like one-dimensional. There was no real depth to them. They were just angry, angsty people. And then there was a romance in this that was very contrived and had no chemistry whatsoever. Actually, all of the romances in this were like that, where it was just like, oh, cool. There were some, like, explanations as to, like, the genetics of everything that's happening, which I thought was kind of cool, but that was like a sentence thrown away here and there and not like ever actually explained. And I just kept getting frustrated because I wanted those explanations, because I feel like the author introduced a lot of interesting concepts that then never went anywhere, or you were just expected to know. And it's like, calm down, take 5 seconds to explain yourself, figure out how to do it in a way that doesn't spoil the rest of the series, and then go from there. I said that there were a lot of interesting ideas in this, and I stand by that. There were some things that definitely could go further into detail and be like super fascinating. But then there are other ideas like war is bad, humans are bad, the world is ending, good riddance. climate change is coming and it's going to kill us all. It's like, all of these ideas need to be talked about, yes, but the way this author was presenting them were just boring. It felt very old and tired and overused, and it really didn't bring anything new to the conversation, but it felt like very unfinished. Like, if you're gonna have a book about rockets and space, there needs to be more rocketry and space. Yes, there were scenes here and there about rocket science and like developing the V2s, which I thought were cool, and I wish we would have spent more time on, but we were like, oh yes, and then they developed this rocket, and then the bad guys came and killed us all, and I was just like, no, well, tell me more about the rockets. That's what this is supposed to be about, right? Building rockets. The whole reason as to why we were supposed to be building rockets was, again, super vague. And then I guess my final complaint, and then I'm gonna leave this video here because I feel like it's not going very well. My final complaint with this book was that the characters themselves, there were 3 or 4 different points of view to this, and they all kind of felt the same. And it was told in first-person perspective, which didn't help, but there was really no differentiation, and there were a lot of times I could not figure out who I was supposed to be reading from, up until, like, they said, oh, so-and-so, and named the character, and I'm just like, oh, is that who we're reading from? Cool. I think my overall, like, overreaching thing is that there needed to be more. There needed to be more discussion on what was actually going on in the world. There needed to be more world building. There needed to be more character development. There just needed to be more explanations as to what we were doing in this book. I may pick up another book in this series if I hear that it has gotten better, but as of right now, I am very reluctant to go anywhere near anything else this author has written. So, 2 out of 5 stars. It does come out it does come out February 2nd. Feel free to check it out if you are interested in this. And then in the meantime, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, whatever floats your boat. If you've read it or if you plan on reading it, let me know down below. I'd love to talk more about it. Maybe you can change my mind on some of this. And I will see you guys soon with another video. Bye!